The year is 108 AD, somewhere in the grey, mist-choked borderlands of northern Britain, a place the Romans called Britannia. Inferior 5,000 soldiers are marching, not raw recruits, not nervous conscripts pulled from provincial farms. These are the men of the Legio IX Hispana, the 9th Legion, veterans of 4 decades of Roman conquest. They march north, into the mist, into territory that Rome, despite all its ambition, had never truly tamed. And then, they're gone. Nearly 2,000 years later, historians searching through the records of the most organized empire the ancient world had ever seen find something deeply unsettling. The records of the 9th Legion simply stop. They didn't just lose a battle, they lost their place in history. To understand why the disappearance of the 9th is so staggering, you first need to understand who they were. The Legio IX Hispana, the Spanish Legion, earned that name during Rome's brutal campaigns across the Iberian Peninsula in the 1st century BC. They were Julius Caesar's soldiers. By the time Emperor Claudius launched his invasion of Britain in 43 AD, the 9th were already legends, one of only 4 legions trusted with the full weight of that conquest. They established the city of Eboracum, modern-day York, turning a windswept outpost into the military capital of Roman Britain. In 60 AD, Queen Boudicca, of the Iceni tribe, launched one of the most ferocious native uprisings in Roman history, burning Colchester, London, and St. Albans to the ground. The 9th marched to meet her. They were ambushed, massacred, their infantry almost entirely destroyed. But here is the thing about the 9th Legion. They survived. They were rebuilt, reinforced, and returned to duty. That resilience, that institutional stubbornness, is what made their later silence so profoundly strange. These were not men who broke easily. The most enduring explanation, the one that captured the Victorian imagination and inspired novels, films, and endless campfire arguments, is also the most brutal. They were wiped out, right here, in the unforgiving north. By 108 AE, the Caledonians had mastered the geography of their own terrain in a way no Roman commander could fully counter. They didn't fight in open formation. They fought in the passes, in the marshes, in the grey pre-dawn dark. They were, in the truest sense, early masters of guerrilla warfare. Imagine 5,000 men, heavily armed, magnificently trained, moving through narrow highland passes in close formation. The fog rolls in so thick a soldier can barely see the standard 10 yards ahead. Then, from the ridgelines above, the sound of screaming. The theory holds that the 9th, weakened, isolated, and caught in terrain that neutralized every Roman tactical advantage, was simply annihilated. Every man, every eagle standard, every record keeper, gone. It's a compelling story. It is also, frustratingly, almost entirely circumstantial. Because then the archaeologists went to the Netherlands. Noviamagus, Batavorum, modern Nijmegen, in the eastern Netherlands. Not exactly where you'd expect Rome's greatest mystery to unravel. In the mid-20th century, archaeologists excavating a Roman military site in Nijmegen made a discovery that quietly, almost politely detonated the Scottish massacre theory. They found tiles, stamped tiles, bearing the unmistakable mark of the Legio IX Hispana. And when they dated them carefully, methodically, using every tool available, those tiles pointed to a date after the 9th had supposedly been destroyed in Britain. The implication is quietly extraordinary. The 9th may not have died in Scotland at all. They simply moved. But the Dutch evidence only deepens the mystery, because the 9th should then appear in 2nd century Rhine records. Other legions do. The 9th does not. They vanish from the Rhine as completely as they vanished from Britain. Whatever happened, it happened there. Rome had a mechanism for dealing with unbearable disgrace. They called it Damnatio Memoriae, the condemnation of memory, the deliberate, systematic erasure of a person or an entity from the historical record. Statues were defaced. Names were chiseled from monuments. Official documents destroyed. The question historians now ask quietly, carefully, is this: did something happen to the 9th Legion so catastrophic, so deeply shameful, that an emperor chose to unmake them from history entirely? The 2nd century AD was a period of profound military pressure on Rome's frontiers. There is a theory, supported by fragmentary evidence, that the ninth was deployed to the eastern frontier, possibly against the Parthian Empire, or to suppress the catastrophic Bar Kokhba revolt in Judea, which ended in 135 AD. If the ninth was destroyed in one of those campaigns, broken not by highland tribesmen, but by a sophisticated eastern enemy, the political optics would have been devastating. An emperor watching morale fracture might have made a cold calculation. Better to erase a legion than to explain its failure. No monument, no record, just silence. So what, after all of this, is the most likely truth? The honest answer, the answer that serious historians will give you, is that we don't fully know, and we may never know. What the evidence suggests is this: the ninth probably was not destroyed in Scotland. The Dutch record makes a massacre before 108 AD increasingly difficult to sustain. They were almost certainly redeployed, probably to the Rhine, possibly further east, sometime in the early 2nd century. And somewhere on that redeployment, in a campaign we cannot name, against an enemy we cannot identify, they ceased to exist as a functioning military unit. But here is the thought that lingers longest. 5,000 soldiers had 5,000 families. Mothers in Hispania who had watched their sons march away. Fathers who measured years by the letters that eventually stopped coming. None of them ever received an official answer. No legion representative knocked on their door. No stone was raised with their son's name on it. The empire that had consumed those men's lives didn't even offer them the dignity of a recorded ending. They marched into the mist, and the mist never gave them back. The Ninth Legion remains one of history's most beautifully unsolved puzzles. Scottish ambush, Eastern catastrophe, Imperial erasure. The theories are compelling precisely because none of them is complete. And that's where you come in. Drop your theory in the comments below. Were they massacred in the highlands, destroyed in Parthia, deliberately erased by an emperor? I read every single one, and the debates down there are genuinely some of the best on this channel. If you want more stories about the lost, the forgotten, and the disappeared, the legends that history swallowed whole, subscribe and hit the bell. We have a lot more ground to cover. The past is full of silences. Let's listen to them together.
Unlocking secrets of the past. This is QSTP for you.